So my SAP was how to make an income online in 2020. I've changed the idea a couple of times, or not the idea itself, but I've had to make a few changes to how I went about doing the project. So the first idea or the first method I went about how to make an income online in 2020 was dropshipping. Um, so initially, I wanted the project to exclusively focus on dropshipping, and I actually wanted to start a functioning company. Um, so a quick introduction. A question you may have is, what actually is dropshipping? I'm sure you've heard the term, but how does it actually work? Well, to put it simply, dropshipping is like a store that never actually comes into contact with its product. Instead of buying product from a wholesaler and then storing it as inventory and then waiting to sell that to a consumer, instead a dropshipping company waits for a consumer to request a product, and then you ship directly from the manufacturer to the consumer. Um, and then I would make money off of the difference in price that the manufacturer sells to me versus the price that I sell to the consumer. And this is known as price arbitrage, and it's a very common business practice. So why did I actually choose dropshipping? Well, there are a lot of immediate benefits. One is that there's very little risk. As I said, there's no overhead. So I don't really need an initial investment. And this means that I don't have the risk of losing all my money. And that's important. And that's why it's a really good, it's a really good starting business, because you don't need initial investment, and because you're not going to lose all of your money, which is always a good thing. Also, you never have to come into contact with your product, which means you don't need facilities to store. So you can run it out of your house, which is another obvious benefit to somebody like me who's working on a high school senior independent project. And this presents a good opportunity to play with creative and innovative business tactics, which you may not normally, out of safety, because you want to make sure you don't lose your investment. So you can kind of play around and try new things. Another reason why it's a good starting business. So now, what about price arbitrage? Like, how does this actually work? Like, why would a consumer buy from me instead of going to a different website, or instead of just buying it at cost like I do? Well, one, I buy from wholesale manufacturers, and they're not super, they're hesitant to sell to consumers. They generally sell to brands that they know they'll have consistent business from, because they sell their products so cheap. So, a consumer isn't just going to go look for wholesalers and buy from them. Um, and then another reason why they would come to me is out of convenience. So in theory, they find me through marketing, and the reason why they buy from me is because my price is consistent and fair with the market. And another reason why they would buy from me specifically is presentation. One problem that a lot of companies have, I see, especially dropshipping companies that sell small products, is that their websites are either difficult to use, or they're just kind of messy and scattered. So that's, presentation is a big part of it. So now actually starting the dropshipping company. So the first step in doing this for me was finding a product to sell. And this is definitely the most important part of starting a company. Like, what do you want to do? What do you want it to be about? I knew I wanted to sell a product that had something to do with technology, because I really like technology, and because I know a lot about it, and I know a lot about the markets. The first thing that I decided I wanted to sell were portable smart devices. And the reason for this is because it's a market that's not oversaturated, but it has a lot of demand and there's a lot of traffic. And those are the two qualities that you have to look for when you're picking a product. So one portable smart device are smart rings, and another is a smart watch. Smart rings have a super high demand because they're an up-and-coming product, but there aren't that many places that are selling them. Smart watches, on the other hand, you have, Apple, Samsung, Fitbit, and a couple other brands who dominate the high tier market, but there isn't that much competition in the lower end smartwatch market, and that one has a lot of potential. And then the other product that I decided to sell are phone and AirPod cases. So around the time I was starting this project, I had just bought a new pair of AirPods, and I was looking for a case online, and I couldn't find any. There were a couple options on Amazon that were pretty plain and boring, and then there were some more interesting options scattered around the internet through pages of Google I had to search. And you can see in this image here, this is the fork from Toy Story 4. It's an AirPods case, and lots of people have these like super creative and cool cases, and I wasn't able to find them anywhere, or if I did, I had to research heavily. So I figured, why not take all of these scattered cases and put them into one store where people can buy them. So my second step was finding an actual wholesaler to buy from. And this proved pretty easy. It was time consuming because I had to email and do trial and error and reach out to different wholesalers. But ultimately, I found 3 good ones that were willing to sell me my product with a minimum order requirement of just 1. So that means it works for dropshipping, because if I get 1 customer who buys, I can order 1 of the product. So I used, to find some of them, I used a website called Global Sources, which essentially you type in a topic or a product, and then a list of different wholesalers come up. So that makes it pretty easy and simple. One I found was Shenzhen Smart Care Technology, which sells smartwatches. Another was Wireless Power Technology, also from Shenzhen, which sells smart rings. And another was Homstech, which sells really cool and creative AirPod cases. So my next step was to design a website. I recognize that this is probably one of the most important factors in a dropshipping company, because this is what sets you apart from the competition, and that's very important. So I needed to check off a few boxes. 1, I wanted to make sure it was presentable and it looked good. 2, I wanted to make sure the user experience was really easy, because if it's really difficult to buy things, or the website looks like it's from 1990, nobody's going to want to come back and buy again, and nobody's going to recommend it to a friend. And it proves very difficult to grow a brand like that. As far as domain goes, I decided to call it ubuy.org, YOO, which is my name, and then buy. That was creative, good SEO, which is search engine optimization. So obviously the website is really important, and I could have used something like Wix, or I could have used something like Squarespace to design a website. But I figured, hey, I'm going to be a computer science major next year. I like coding. I may as well brush off the old HTML skills and code one from scratch. So that's what I did. And I actually spent most of the fall working on the website itself. So this is about the point where I got to in the fall. This is just a snippet of code that I wrote. And then this is the actual website itself. I think it looks pretty good. I might have made a few changes, but for the most part, I'm pretty pleased with the way it turned out. As you can see, you have the logo, and then you have new products with some news or sales. And then these are actual images of products that I would be selling. So these come directly from the shippers. So then step 4 was marketing. And this is where I reached a little bit of a setback. So there are different marketing strategies you can try. The 2 most popular for dropshipping that I found were 1, internet ads. So, Instagram, Snapchat, YouTube. You go through either Google ad service or Instagram ad service or Facebook ad service, and they're pretty cheap to get ads these days. Or another one you can do is YouTube sponsorship, or any content creator sponsorship. So you reach out to low-level creators and you say, hey, would you be willing to give my business a shout out? And most likely they'll say, yeah, sure. Or if they're like, no, then you can try an incentive. You can be like, okay, if you shout my business out, I take, the number of referrals you get out of those shipments and those orders, you get a certain amount of, or a certain percent of profit. Yeah, so those are two marketing strategies that are really popular. However, ultimately, I wanted to be paired with a mentor in marketing, and I wanted to kind of focus the project around that. But I wasn't able to get a mentor, and without that, marketing is something that does require resources. I would have to invest money, most likely. I mean, I could have reached out to content creators, but um, I decided to change the project instead. So um, I decided to model this business instead of create an actual business. So I have all of the steps except the actual selling part. So it's more of a, you know, like, I guess the word is like modeled. Yeah, that's a fine word. So um, this is where my project kind of umbrellaed, and I decided to make it more about how can you make an income online in 2020, and especially because this is a really interesting time in our world, right? Like it's basically most incomes right now are coming from online, and people have to be creative because stores are closed, businesses are closing down unless they're online. So the other method I decided to look at was the stock market, specifically swing trading. Um, so another couple questions you may have, just like dropshipping, is, well, what are the basics of the stock market? I'm sure most of you here actually know, but I'll explain it anyway. And also, what is swing trading specifically? Well, obviously, the way that the stock market works is essentially you buy a company's shares, and this is very simplified. You buy a number of shares of a company in hopes that the share price increases, and then you sell and make a profit off the difference. And there are a lot of consistent trends that you can see in stock graphs, especially for swing traders. And the definition of a swing trader is you're generally holding a stock for 2 to 3 days, and you're generally buying cheaper stocks that are likely to go up a bigger percent. So the steps in trading, the first step, and definitely the most important step, and I hope that you're seeing that this is becoming a consistent theme in this project, is research. Pretty much any way you want to make money online in 2020, research is the biggest part of it. You want to make sure the stocks you're buying are reliable. You want to make sure the product you're selling on a dropshipping company has good traffic, but it's not oversaturated. Same thing. And research is the first step in buying any stock. Once you've found a good stock, you put it on your wait list, and you wait and you listen. You listen to the news, you monitor that stock, and you wait for a good opportunity when you think it's going to increase. And then that's when you take action. You buy, you sell. So I actually put the difference here is that I actually put swing trading into practice. I took an initial investment of $5,000 that I had been saving since I was little for college, and I decided to invest it all. And I actually doubled my investment in like a month and a half. Now, obviously, I was lucky in some regard because of circumstance. Right now, the market is kind of going up and down like crazy, and because of Corona, so I was able to take advantage of that. And I was also able to take advantage of the dramatic decrease into the negative of oil price. And that once again goes into the listening and waiting period. I had shipment companies in my wait list. I did research on shipping companies, and I realized that there's a potential to make money. I waited and I listened, and I saw that the Saudi Arabia conflict was going on with Russia, and I realized that eventually oil was going to drop. And when it did, I invested in a couple companies that were shipping companies, and I made a decent profit. So I was lucky in how much I made, but the fact that I did have gain, that came directly from research. So my ultimate goal for swing trading is to take, an income or a certain amount of money that I've made, doing swing trading, 2 to 3 day investments. And then once I have enough, do the same process, but with a larger company that I can hold for longer periods of time to do a long-term investment. Yeah. So those are the two types of ways to make money in 2020 I looked at. Um, so what did I learn? One, I learned about basic business models. Price arbitrage, even though it can differ, is generally how every company makes money. Amazon buys from wherever and sells to a consumer. And obviously they have inventory and they serve as more of a mediator than I would, but um, it's a similar practice. You make a profit off of the difference in the product you sell, and any retailer is doing the same thing. Um, really, any company that makes a product, you know, if you're Nike, you make profit off of the difference in how much it costs you to produce the good versus how much you sell it for. Um, and then I also learned a lot about the importance of marketing and presentation. Um, that's one of the biggest things that's going to set you apart from the competition. And that's really important. You know, user experience. Do they like the website? Does it look professional? And that's all huge considerations. Um, then what did I learn about the stock market? Well, I learned a lot about the fundamentals. I had an okay understanding going in, but I feel much more confident in my knowledge of the stock market, and I feel much more confident about my ability to continue to make money in the future, especially to take investments and throw them into a company that I think is reliable, and hopes that maybe I can make parts of college tuition and things like that. Um, and then I also learned the importance of patience in this. You have to be confident enough to act sometimes, but also it's important to wait and make sure that you're not making a hasty decision. And then probably the most important thing I learned is the value of research. I hope that you saw that throughout this whole thing. Research was integral in both of these methods. You have to have an understanding of the market you're going into, and you have to make sure that you know what you're talking about, or you know what you're doing, because if you don't, you're most likely going to fail because you can't get lucky every time. Um, so yeah, that's all I have. That's all I've been able to complete in this time frame. So thank you. And are there questions?
I have a bunch of questions, Ben. First of all, that was very, very well done.
Thank you.
Floored me with your profit. So, you know, after college, I might be reaching out for financial advice. So, I guess jumping into I'll go to the end first. Did you use a specific what platform did you use as like an online brokerage?
I just use E-Trade.
Okay. And
I think there are other sites.
Commission? Is E-Trade a free commission?
I don't know.
They have a commission? Okay.
So like there are sites like Robinhood, right? That
yeah.
I just use E-Trade.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did any particular reason?
A lot of the like whenever I would go into like whenever I would read a book or something, or read like a research paper on like stock market, they usually use E-Trade.
Okay.
And also my friend's dad is a day trader. That's what he does full time. And I was kind of asking him for some advice, and he uses E-Trade. So it kind of I just used it out of familiarity.
Back to research. I like it. And then I think you kind of hinted at this, but as you were looking into stocks to buy first, and then when you're selling them off, were you making, and you termed it, you're making these bets, which I thought was a very smart way to describe it. Were you making these based more on current events, like you talk about, you know, reading about the oil crisis, or are you also spending a lot of time digging into the financial specifics of the company?
Right. So I mainly make my preliminary decision based on current events. So I see which companies have potential to increase double in the next month or next even weeks. And once I pick a series of different, you know, like a genre of company, like maybe it's Shipment, for example, that's what I used. Then I look at their web pages and make sure, you know, they're not like in debt, or, you know, they're not going to fall through while I have my money invested in them. Yeah, so that's generally how I do it. I look at um, potential to increase first, and then I make sure that the company's reliable.
Good, good. All right, so now we'll shift back to the original project.
Yeah.
The so could you have, back when you had your setback with marketing,
Mhm.
could you have um, could you have paid someone to have put you higher in the Google queue? So if I'm looking for AirPod cases and I just Google AirPod cases, could that have been part of your marketing strategy to pay someone to put you higher so you're the first one or the second one?
Actually,
To,
yes, I think that is a thing. I didn't mention that because I wasn't really thinking about it, but now that you mention it, my mom at one point tried to start a company, and I remember her telling me that part of her marketing strategy was um, using some source, maybe it was directly to Google, to put her results higher in the page. So yeah, I think I
you
could have done that.
you should reach out to Leo Zhang because his SIP last year was not a company but based on YouTube, this algorithm for search engines, and he actually did it with, I think he worked with our YouTube channel so that if you searched like prep school football or
Mhm.
prep school basketball, that there were certain keywords that were embedded in the YouTube description. So I'm sure you could probably do it for your site too if you ever went live again,
Right.
where the Google or YouTube picks up on those specific words that he knows are hot, kind of hot button topics, and it shows up higher and higher and higher. So the goal was like with his was when someone Googles like all boys boarding school, that our YouTube videos show up before Salisbury or before Avon. So I
I
think
see.
I would think it would be interesting for you to touch base with him,
Yeah,
um,
definitely.
just to see what he would have to say about your side of things. And then um, last question, I like that you brought it in at the end. So it's kind of a two-part question, but what are the guys, like these guys that at the beginning of the pandemic that were hoarding hand sanitizer or cleaning supplies? Are are they using, is Amazon like drop shipping from them kind of? You know what I'm saying?
Um,
Or don't you know?
I'm not really sure. I don't really know. I mean, obviously I heard about people who were buying things in bulk to sell them. I don't really know how they went about that. Um, sorry, could you I'm confused what you mean with the Amazon thing.
So so is Amazon, I guess I'm wondering what the advantage of you, obviously one advantage is that as you're finding these companies to drop ship for,
Mhm.
you mentioned that some of them were like, yeah, go ahead, buy one, and then that's your minimum order. So it's very low risk for you. But as you get bigger and bigger, is there an advantage to, especially in this day and age where Amazon's this massive company where, I mean, if I want to go look for something, I'm just going to Amazon right now as a
Mhm.
consumer. So is there an advantage to just becoming another seller on Amazon as opposed to doing what you're doing with your individual drop shipping website?
Right. Yeah, of course there is. I mean, um, yeah, going through Amazon, obviously, like you said, it gives you like, I guess, just some more ethos. Like people trust Amazon. It's
Mm-hmm.
the one of the biggest companies in the world, and pretty much all online shopping these days, people just go directly to Amazon. They don't even bother Googling it. They look it up on Amazon, the site. So yeah, if you're, if you know that hand sanitizer is um, in high demand and there's low supply, then selling it on Amazon obviously has its benefits because marketing becomes less of an issue because the user is already searching up a specific product on the most popular site like in the world. Um, Although another thing about Amazon though is that I believe you have to, so you, if you're drop shipping on Amazon, you become um, you're no longer really the mediator. You are the wholesaler. You're the manufacturer in their eyes, and Amazon's the mediator.
Right.
So you take your product. I believe nowadays you have to ship it to Amazon and then they ship it. but instead of, a consumer coming to me and then I ask another company to ship to them, a consumer goes to Amazon and they ask the person who's selling the hand sanitizer to sell to Amazon to sell to the consumer. So it kind
That
of, I
makes sense.
guess, like switches roles a little bit.
It adds a whole other step. Yeah. I think and last thing I'll add, this isn't really a question, and then I'll let everyone else jump in. I thought it was really interesting you brought up trust, that Amazon has this, that people inherently trust the Amazon brand right now. So that's one thing that you're constantly fighting against as a smaller private drop shipping company, where
Yeah.
who's going to trust this you guy, right? Excuse me. There's a really interesting TED talk that I'll send you that talks about how this idea of trust, and it was probably 5 years ago, I think, so it's rather old. But it talks about how the economy is now, money is always going to be a factor, but that this idea of trust, and every single one of us has this different level of trust that we've built up through all of these various globalized interactions on anything from Airbnb to HomeAway to our Uber ratings, and how whether you're a consumer or you're a seller on these websites, that you're adding to this trust rating, and it's a really interesting argument. I think you would enjoy listening to, because it's kind of arguing against, you don't need Amazon here, because we all could build our own specific brand based on how much I trust you, even though you're a complete stranger.
Right.
So I'll send that to you after.
Yeah. Another issue with Amazon, this is kind of, I guess, a little bit of a tangent, but just, talking about Amazon and the threat that it poses to small business, is that a lot of what Amazon does is, yeah, they're a retailer, obviously, but AWS is Amazon Web Services, and they own like something like 50 or more % of all of the bandwidth on the internet. So basically any company you go to is probably actually run by Amazon, or they're essentially like their landlords. And that means that Amazon has access to all of the data that company has. So Amazon can take your best product, put it on their site, bleed you dry, lose money to do it, and not sweat, which is kind of horrible. But that's something that I think all small businesses deal with. And it's true back, however many years ago with Walmart and entered the market and things like that.
Can I jump in here for a sec, Ben?
Yeah, of course.
I think the other piece of the puzzle, and maybe I missed it, but with Amazon, you have to pay a commission to Amazon, and that's your profit. So, that's why you don't want to go to Amazon, is you got to pay them. I hate to be a Debbie Downer, but for instance, if you're a drop shipper, do you need to get a privilege use license with the state of New York and pay taxes as a company?
Actually, yeah, you do. I actually forgot to include that. I had it in my fall presentation.
Well, good for you. Good for you, because you don't have to go back to that. The fact that you paid attention to that, kudos to you, because I think a lot of time it's easy to set up something in the sense that you're how do I make some money? But you got to take into account sales tax. And the other thing about day trading or swing trades, you're going to get crushed with taxes on short trades. Did you get into that at all? That it's expensive to be a day trader if you don't hold your properties for more, I believe it's a year, and then it goes to the capital gains at 15%. But if you do it within the year, you pay a higher rate.
I am not familiar with that. I haven't really run into that. I can definitely look into it though.
Yeah. Okay. You got to be careful, because the tax man watches swing traders.
Mm-hmm.
And I had another question: is that when you do a drop shipping, who pays the postage? The manufacturer, or do you have to pay the postage for the manufacturer?
Um, I think I think I would actually pay the postage. Well, it depends obviously on, some manufacturers will do it for you, and I think it varies, but generally I think I would be paying the postage, but, I would take that into consideration when I, fix my price for the product.
Because I have to think it'd be very expensive for a wholesaler to send out one, pod case to Fred because
Right.
Ben Yoon ordered one case.
Yeah. Yeah. I would probably be paying for the shipping. I think it obviously depends on the order size. I think they have a minimum order size for probably, we'll cover shipping if you buy more than X amount of product. But yeah, most likely I would be covering shipping.
And
Um,
if you become a bigger drop shipper, although I realize that's not the direction you're now headed, do you have to get liability insurance and product liability insurance? So person puts in the earplugs and they get electrocuted. Are you on the hook as the guy who sold them?
I see. I'm actually not sure about that. I could only make the assumption that I would be though. Yeah.
Yeah, see, I've seen the Debbie Downer, but I love what
Yeah.
you did. And you know what? I love two things about your presentation or about your whole SIP. First is you pivoted, and that is a hard thing to do
Thank you.
because you have to give up a lot of the work you've done. So kudos to you for doing that. And then the second thing, and I think is probably the most impressive thing for me to watch, is your decision to code your own website.
Hmm.
That good for you.
Thank
If
you.
anything, that skill is invaluable. So for that reason alone, for that coding and taking that decision, I think you should be very, very proud. You've done a great job. And that's why, these presentations are just so impressive to see what you guys do. So kudos to you.
Thank you.
Ben, I thought it was fabulous. So congratulations. I don't really have any questions. I have a couple of observations though.
Okay.
That I love your whole sort of deep dive into the drop shipping, and 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 the willingness to sort of look at something that somebody else is doing in a massive scale and try to find a smaller way to dig into that. I joked with my daughter last week because we sent her something via Amazon, and I said, we would have had a better luck if we had ordered from Sears Roebuck today, doing the Sears Roebuck catalog, because Amazon is actually failing in today because they're so big, they're so reliant on their local warehouses, and the labor, the unreliability of the labor has slowed everything down in massive ways. And so they're taking, in terms of their brand trust, I don't trust anything from Amazon. I'm probably going to order something from Amazon, but I'm building in a month in my expectation to how when I'm going to get it. So kudos to you for sort of going after the big guys, because I mean that's how enterprise works, is when you don't take for granted that something is invincible. And the second observation I have is, with your investments. And I love the fact that you said that first of all, Las Vegas is opening up soon, but people should just work with you instead of going to Vegas. You'll have better odds of return. But the fact that you were taking your investments with the objective of helping with your tuition, you're investing in yourself, and you're investing in your brain power, and you're investing in your ability to become more knowledgeable and creative. You're not investing in a new stereo or something that is a user. I mean, you're investing in yourself, and so you're personifying the whole principle of investment. And which I thought was just fabulous. So good job.
Thank you.